You're watching Untitled Chapter and we visit Europe. Welcome on Untitled Chapter. If you like our content, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and to like our videos. In this new journey, we go to Europe. You'll follow us from Montreal to Paris, from Paris to Milano, and from Milano to Palermo. And for this first day in Sicily, we'll visit the Norman Castle, the Duomo of Palermo, the Balaro market, and the famous Teatro Massimo. And at the end of the day, we'll visit the archaeological site of Segesta. Welcome to our new adventure in Europe. In this new series, we'll spending a few days in Sicily before flying to Rome, the Eternal City. T'as dit que le voyage commence fort?
Ça commence très fort.
Comment ça va?
Va bene.
What Europeans forget is that North Americans always start their journey on the old continent a day earlier, since most of the flights leave for Europe in the early evening.
Parla italiano?
Parla italiano.
And as there are no flights between Canada and Sicily, our trip begins with a flight from Montreal to Charles de Gaulle Airport.
Dave, voir Paris mourir. Bon, ça a toujours été mon rêve d'aller à Paris. On est à Charles de Gaulle, que je considère que been there, done that. Check. Que là, on visite l'aéroport Charles de Gaulle. C'est le highlight. Là. Honnêtement, le reste vaut pas vraiment la peine à Paris, mais l'aéroport, c'est vraiment un must.
All kidding aside, it's always nice to spend a few hours in France, if only to enjoy a croissant and a jambon beurre. After stopping for a few hours in Paris, we hit the road again, heading for Milano. Yes, once again, the cheapest flight included a stopover at Linate Airport, the smallest airport in the Italian metropolis. And the short time between the two flights almost prevented our suitcases from following us. Although we were exhausted, we were very much looking forward to arriving in the capital of Sicily, and the flight from Milano to Palermo of barely an hour and a half was very pleasant. With the sight of the coastline, we were already looking forward to the real start of our journey. The Giuseppe Falcone Airport is rather rudimentary, but this enabled us to take possession of our car very quickly, even if the language barrier caused a few quiproquos. Welcome to Palermo, Sicily's largest city, with 650,000 inhabitants. As usual, driving in Italy is erratic, but a good driver manages it without too much trouble. We arrived safely at the Hotel Politeama opposite to the theater of the same name, a place we'd recommend.
Dave, on est où?
Là, on est à Palermo,
Puis,
à l'hôtel Politeama.
Le voyage est bien fait.
Oui, le voyage à date va super bien. On a visité l'aéroport Charles de Gaulle, l'aéroport de Milan et l'aéroport Giuseppe Falcone.
After stretching our legs and enjoying a bit of the city's nightlife, we headed for the Il Cappero restaurant. It was a good way to start the rest of our trip, as the wine and the food were both delicious.
Cheers, Félix, à ta fête demain, à notre beau voyage, à l'amitié, à l'amour.
An address to keep in mind if you're staying in Palermo.
Allô? Hey! Comment vai?
The first day of our stay in Sicily, we leave very early to visit the city's main attraction, the Norman Palace. By the way, be careful in Palermo. Negotiate your taxi carefully or you risk to being ripped off. In order to take a good look around, we disembarked a few steps from the Porta Nuova, which has been the most important access to Palermo for centuries. The Norman Palace is the #1 attraction on any visit to Palermo. From the 12th century, the building became the residence of the Norman kings. Today, the deputies of the Sicilian Regional Assembly sits here. Our visit begins on the first floor with the Palatine Chapel. This is undoubtedly the highlight of the show, as the frescoes are spectacular. It is said to be the best example of the Arab Norman style, a blend of Carolingian, Norman, Byzantine, and Arab influence, as well as its impressive Byzantine mosaics dating from the early 12th century, the wooden coffered ceiling, reminiscent of a mosque, was designed by a worker from Cairo, Egypt.
So we're now in the Norman Palace, which is one of the main attractions of Palermo.
We then went up to the second floor, where the Sicilian Regional Assembly is located. This is where the 70 members of the regional parliament sit. For a seat of government, it's kind of really prestigious. The palace, in its current form, was in fact built around 1130 by Roger II of Sicily. You will pass through many chambers, including the Chinese room, which is spectacular. Here we are in one of the oldest parts of the palace, containing 2 ambulatory halls. We first pass through the Hall of the Winds, with its superb open air and resplendent ceiling. This area then leads to the Hall of Roger, otherwise known as King's Hall, which contains some superb and very well preserved mosaics. Along with the Palatine Chapel, these are the 2 places not to be missed. Word of advice: don't forget to book your ticket in advance, as on some days the number of visitors exceeds the capacity of the building. There are also a number of exhibitions to visit on site, but these can be done quickly or skipped if you're short of time. The same goes for the gardens in the other courtyards, which are nothing spectacular but do allow you to appreciate the richness of the site. Another example of the Sicily's Arab-Norman heritage is the church of St-Jean-des-Ermites. It is thought to have been built during the Norman period between 1130 and 1148, during the reign of King Roger II again. Today, the interior is bare and intimate, but the presence of ancient mosaic is suspected.
Good evening.
Hey, on est à la cathédrale normande. Et là, on se prépare pour une pause à...
Nearby, a cloister is attached to the church. It's a lovely place to relax for a while before hitting the road again. We continued our walk through the heart of Palermo to another point of interest, Palermo Cathedral.
Alors, je sais que David Quintin, premier jour du voyage, ça va bien?
Ça va bien.
C'est-tu beau, Palerme?
À Palerme, c'est exceptionnel.
Sicily tour by bus, Palermo, Montreal tour.
However, as Sicilians do, we stopped for a quick espresso or cappuccino to give us a bit of energy.
Cappuccino or espresso?
Okay, two espresso.
Okay, to go or here?
Another must-see is a visit to the Duomo di Palermo, or the Palermo's Cathedral, which, like St-Jean-des-Ermites, dates from the 12th century. From the outside, you can recognize the Arab-Norman style of the building. Again, according to the legend, the site was once home of a church, converted into a mosque in the 9th century by the Arabs. What is certain, however, is that the coronation of the first king of Sicily, Roger II, took place here on Christmas Day in 1130. Apart from the exterior of the building, which retained its original appearance, we must admit that the interior of the basilica is of little interest. In fact, there are much more beautiful churches in Palermo, as we shall soon see. We continue our tour of the city along Via Vittorio Emanuele, the city's main thoroughfare and a pedestrian street by part where most tourists like us congregate. Along the way, you'll see the anti-mafia monument, a number of ancient buildings, and shops of all kinds. You can even buy some socks of the Godfather film. Our walk continues as far as the most famous crossroads, the Quattro Quanti, in fact 4 fountains at the 4 corners representing the 4 seasons. We then turn right onto Via Macada to reach Piazza Bellini. This pretty nice square is home to 3 historic churches of completely different styles. Our first stop was the church of San Cataldo, built in 1154 in a style similar to that of St-Jean-des-Ermites. If you want to save €2, you don't have to go in. The church of the Martorana, a few steps away, is much more beautiful. The most interesting thing about this church is the exceptional mosaic inside.
Dance.
Puis mon live, c'est bon.
Good.
Do as we did. Don't miss the markets. We strolled through the Balaro market, which is located near the central station in the Albergheria district. This is the city's largest and oldest market. Its origins date back to the 10th century when the Arabs traded here. A must-see. We definitely had a great time wandering the streets of Palermo. It's the best way to discover this exceptional city. After a good morning of sightseeing, we headed back to the hotel. We also took the time to have an amazing lunch in a restaurant just behind the Teatro Massimo. We're not going to hide it. We're total fans of the Godfather movies trilogy. So, being in Palermo, we had on our list an obligatory stop at the Teatro Massimo, which is one of the stars of the last film of the series.
Bonjour. Hello.
Okay, you can follow me.
Thank you.
In addition to this, the Teatro Massimo is the largest opera house in Italy and even the third largest in Europe with over 1,600 seats.
So we are now in the Massimo Theater in Palermo, which is really famous because you've seen it in the Godfather Part 3.
Built in the 19th century, can you imagine that it was only restored and reopened in 1997 after 23 years of neglect? Thanks to Francis Ford Coppola for insisting on the reopening of this monument to film inside. It is without no doubt one of the most beautiful opera houses in Europe. Its stage is so vast that it can accommodate up to 700 actors. Only the Opéra Garnier in Paris and the Staatsoper in Vienna have bigger halls than this. Like us, go and have a look. You won't be disappointed.
The last visit of the day is to the archaeological site of Segesta. The site is located 75 kilometers from Palermo, about an hour drive. It's a so vast site that we even had to board into a bus to get on the top. As well as discovering the ancient Acropolis and a superb view, the site still boasts among its remains an almost intact theater dating from the second half of the 3rd century BC. Unlike most Greek theaters, this one, 63 meters of diameter, faces north. This is due to the splendid view from the hillside terrace. On a clear day, you can even see the Mediterranean Sea.
So we are now in the Segesta Theater.
The origins of Segesta are still uncertain, but the site was first settled by the Elymian and then by the Greeks. Its troubled history ended first in 306 BC when Segesta was conquered and destroyed. It flourished again under the Romans before being destroyed by the Vandals in the 5th century, and then by the Arabs. It was never rebuilt. All that remains today is the perfectly preserved Doric temple and the theater. In fact, the marvel of the site remains the remarkably well-preserved Doric temple dedicated to the goddess Hera. Its architecture is typical of the 5th century BC, with 6 columns on the facade and 14 on each side. We ended this first day in Sicily with a meal at Trattoria Carpaccio, located just a few steps from our hotel and the Politeama Theater. As well as an exceptional welcome from the owner, everything is delicious in this family restaurant.
Tutto bene.
Tutto va bene?
Tutto va bene.
Don't forget to ask for the house limoncello.
Un petit peu. Molto bene.
And by the way, if you're passing by, don't hesitate to say hello to the owner on our behalf.
On va immortaliser ça. Thanks for watching this new episode of Autour du Monde in Europe. In our next episode, we'll stay in Sicily and we'll visit the Cathedral of Montreal, Corleone, Agrigento, and we'll finish the day in Catania.